We are going to start off our series here with dust mops. And dust mops, we have two different colors and two different sizes, yellow and blue. The only difference is the size of them. The function is exactly the same. These are made from cotton, so they're not grabbing like microfiber does, so we need to treat them. Remember from Super Hill Tone video, we're going to treat them with Super Hill Tone. First treatment is pretty heavy, but you always want to let dry overnight so that that chemical can work at its peak. You want to dry upside down so that it's ready to go. When you're done mopping, or when you're ready to start mopping the next day, you're going to kind of want to fluff it up and before you go ahead and put it on your dust mop handle. And same thing at the end of a shift, you're going to want to really clean it out good. We don't want to leave a lot of excess dirt and grime in there at the end of a shift before we use it the next shift. So clean it out really good, shake it out, scrape it down, take it outside, hit it up against the wall, whatever you need to do a little bit. Clean that stuff out and then pre-treat, ready and prepared for the following day. Follow-up treatments after the first one do not need to be very thick, just a little bit to kind of give that surfactant the ability to do its job. So it's going to grab that dirt and dust from the floor and help it to cling to that cotton mop head. Okay, this is a handle for the dust mops, and it's kind of just a framework for that mop head, and you're going to want to slide it in. Then they're a little bit different depending on each dust mop. Some of them snap together on the other side, some of them Velcro together, some of them have tie straps. Everyone's just a little bit different. The ones at Weber Cleaning here, the blue ones for sure, have snaps to kind of hold it onto that handle for you. Okay, so that's how we're going to attach it to our handle, and we're ready and prepared. So when it's time to do the job, you are only ever going to use a dust mop dry with its pre-treated chemical that has been dried overnight. You do not ever want moisture to be on this dry dust mop. It's essentially acting like a broom, and so you're sweeping, but the chemical is allowing that dirt and dust to cling while also creating a barrier on the surface of the floor to give it some sheen and a little bit of shine to make your floors look nice. Now, we do not use dust mops at a lot of our locations, but I want you to understand how to use them in case we get a location that we do need to use them. Larger areas that are not to be wet mopped every single shift is a great place for a dry dust mop. It keeps your floors kind of shiny. A lot of times gyms will use these in between cleanings, or large VCT tile surfaces will use a dust mop like this in between wet moppings. Okay, this is not a pre-treatment for a wet mop. This is an in-between sessions. Okay, I cannot say that enough. This is not in place of the pre-treatment before you wet mop. This is a dry mop that shines the surface because you're using that chemical on it to kind of give it a little bit of a sheen. So this is a stand-alone dry dust mop. Okay, all right, in this case, you are going to clear your space ahead of time. I have moved, there was a patient bed that I moved off to the side. There was a patient chair that I moved to the side, garbage cans that I moved out of the way. And I apologize for not recording that, but move everything out of the way ahead of time. And so you have an area that you can mop back and forth, longer swipes. This is not the same figure eight motion as you would use with a microfiber mop because you're not really creating that static cling like the microfiber mop is going to do to make the stuff pick up into the microfiber. This is using the chemical and the cotton fibers to kind of do the work for you. Okay, what you are going to see here in a little bit is that I definitely had the mop locked, so I didn't have as much freedom in my mopping as I would normally like to see, so I kind of bumble here in a second, but I'll figure out my mistake here very shortly. So you're going to want to work your way back and forth in longer sweeping motions, getting into the corners as best you can to get all of the dust, all of the dirt kind of taken with you out of the room. Okay, you're essentially creating a sweep here. Oop, look at me. I figured out how to unlock it. Now I've got a little more swivel room in my mopping, so that makes it a little bit easier for me. And so you're kind of going in longer motions. You're going to pick up the garbage, you're going to pick up the hairs, and you're going to pick up the dust and the dirt and everything that's kind of on that floor so that you're ready to go for the following day. Again, we do not use this very often at Weber Cleaning, but I want you to understand how the process works and what the chemicals are to use so that if you need it, it's ready in there for you. You can use this as a pre-treatment before you wet mop. Just don't use the Super Hill Tone with it. You wouldn't want to use that chemical and then go ahead and try to mop with Rejuvenol or Suprax or something, or even Super Shinol after you've already applied this process. I would not recommend it. I think you're kind of using two slightly competing chemicals, and the Super Hill Tone has no purpose at that point. So I wouldn't do that. Then you're going to sweep it all the way to the end and kind of just brush it off just a little bit so that you create a pile so your vacuum can go along and pick that up before you moved on to the next area. Okay, let's talk about the microfiber mop system that we use here at Weber Cleaning. The vast majority of mopping you are going to do, hand mopping, is going to be with these microfiber mops. So red and blue are not different in their cleaning ability. Where they differ is where we use them. So our red mops are used for dirty sites. Think elevators, construction sites, places where they might have like sawdust or lots of leaves or lots of just really grubby floors where it's gonna get stuck in that mop head. Okay, so we are gonna keep those for those really dirty sites. We're gonna wash them separate, take care of them separately, okay? The blue mop heads will work the same, but we're gonna keep those for the nicer sites, your office buildings, your clinics, things like that, where it's not gonna come into contact with quite as much grubby dirt that gets stuck and ground in there. So they stay better a little bit longer. So that's currently the difference in the color, not in cleaning ability, just the color. Okay, when you're mopping with the microfiber mop system, if you turn it over, I'm just gonna take this blue one for my example. There are two pockets on it. That is how you hold it onto the mop, okay? So what happens is this button collapses my mop head, okay? It makes it fold. And then I can put it on both sides of the mop. Now, when it's sopping wet, this isn't really how you're gonna put it on the mop, but for demonstration for the moment, I'm just gonna show you this route, okay? So you put the two ends of the mop head into the pocket and click it back together so it's firm. Now you're ready to mop, okay? You want colored side down, pockets on the top. If you step on that, it's gonna fold it up, and that's how you're gonna let go of your mop head when you're ready for the new one, okay? I'll demonstrate that in a second on the floor with a wet mop. Next, I want to talk about the different types of cleaning buckets. So when using these mop heads, the preferred method is with the double bucket method, but you can use the double bucket method or the pre-soak method, that's another name for it, with any of our cleaning buckets, okay? You don't just need the double mop bucket in order to do that. But the trick is, with the double mop bucket, you're gonna fill one side of the bucket with pre-treated water. So put your gallon of water in there, half a gallon, whatever it is you're gonna need. Add your chemical second. You don't want it to foam up in suds. So put your water in first, chemical in second, and then you're going to put in all the mop heads you're gonna need to do your job, okay? So if that's 3, 4, a dozen, that's fine. The trick to remember is that one mop head will probably only clean in a normal facility about 400 square feet. That's about the space of a parking stall, okay? So if you can imagine how big your car is, imagine parking your car in the stall at Walmart or at Weber Cleaning, and imagine how big of a space that is. That's about as much area as you want to clean with one of these mops before it's probably full enough or dirty enough that you want to switch out to a new one. Okay, now there are variances with that. For example, in very dirty environments, you're going to want to switch out more often. If you're cleaning up a specific spill or mess, you're going to want to switch it out more often. You will notice, if you're paying attention and if you're in tune with your cleaning and you're focused on what you're doing, you'll notice when it starts to feel full and it doesn't feel like it's grabbing anymore. That's what we're looking for with these microfiber mops. The microfibers, grab the dirt, grab the grime, pick it up, and keep it in the mop. When it's no longer picking it up, it's just like smushing it all around the floor, that's when you need to switch it out, okay? All right, so with the double mop bucket, so you're gonna put your water in, put your chemical in, then lay your mops in there, stacked up as many as you're gonna need, okay? Same thing goes with the green bucket, the regular cleaning bucket. Same thing goes with the single rectangular mop bucket, okay? Blue bucket, green bucket, red bucket, doesn't matter. They all can do the same thing. Put your water in, the chemical in, then put your mops down into the water, okay? So I've got that on all three of them, okay? So when you take your mop out, the best way to mop is to wring this out really good. You do not want it to be sloppy wet. If you're mopping and that's your final step, besides kind of buffing it dry afterwards, the more or the less soupy water that you have in there, the less you're gonna have to buff out the streaks in your floors after you're done, okay? So you're gonna wanna kind of roll it up as you take it out and wring it out, okay? Now I'm gonna release this mop head so I can show you. Move my mop bucket to the side, okay? I'm gonna lay it on the floor, okay? I'm gonna put my mop down. I'm gonna lay them so they line up with my pockets and just wiggle them in and push it down. Now my wet mop is attached, and after wringing it out, I don't have to touch it again, okay? Then we're gonna go to our floors, which will be in another clip. Once we're done, okay, once I'm done mopping my floor, I'm gonna go ahead and take my mop head. I'm gonna step on my button, release it, shake it off. I can pick it up from the center, fold it together. I'm not touching any of that dirty grime on my mop handle or my mop head. And in the double bucket method, I can go ahead and just dump that mop head into this empty side of the bucket, okay? With the other two buckets, you're gonna wanna have a cart with you. A lot of the places I understand have cleaning carts. So you're gonna wanna put that in a bag on your cart somewhere so that those are separate to go to the office and get washed, okay? But the same method goes true with the green bucket. I can roll it up. Obviously, I wanna be aware of how much I'm slopping. Any bucket that you're taking water out of, whether it's with your rag or the mop handle, you're gonna wanna be careful about splattering, okay? Especially if you're wiping desks, if you're mopping a floor where you've already cleaned, you don't wanna splatter more water back on the floor. You don't wanna spill a bunch of water and slip and fall on it. So keeping your water contained in that mop bucket is important. So see, I can wring it out the same, whether it's the green bucket and even the blue bucket. Okay, they all work interchangeably. The red one's a little bit easier if you don't have a cart, but the other ones work great if you have a cleaning cart. Just as good.
Okay, let's actually watch this in action. The first step to mopping any floor is preparation. You want to move any items out of your room that are going to be in the way of your mop. That way you have a nice, clean, open space to work with. And everything's kind of out of your way so you can get in and out as quickly as possible. So the very first step is removing all of your items. The next step in floor preparation is actually sweeping or dry mopping. Essentially the same thing, but what you're gonna do is take one of your dry mop heads, do not get it wet, but take one of your dry microfiber mops and you're gonna put it on your mop system, just as if you were going to wet mop the floor. And then you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna dry mop the whole floor to remove all of the larger particles of dust or sand or hair, Kleenexes, any of the items that might be on the floor that you would not want to wet mop down to the floor. You would not want to try to pick up any big items while you're wet mopping. Wet mopping is cleaning the dried up stuff off the floor, the footprints, the spills, the coffee drips, the things like that. The dry mopping's purpose is to get the big stuff, just as if you were going to sweep your floor. The nice part about the microfiber dry mop is that you're going to create a little bit of a static cling with your mop head, and you're going to pick up a lot of those bigger chunks, plus a lot of the dust in preparation, so that your floor will not dry streaky when you go back and wet mop. I am going to cut into the middle of this mopping session to show you the other option for dry dusting or sweeping prior to wet mopping. And this is the microfiber dust mop. You will not treat this one with super hill tone, so it's not to be used in place of the cotton dust mop, but this one is to be used dry and clean prior to wet mopping your floors. It looks a little bit different than the wet mop heads, and it definitely looks different than the cotton mop heads, so you can tell the difference. But this one is really good for sweeping or dry dusting prior to wet mopping. And then once you've dry mopped the entire floor, bring your stuff kind of to the edge of the floor and sweep it up or vacuum it up, get it to carpet, something that it can be removed that way. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to wet mop. You're going to attach that wet mop from your pre-soak bucket, just like we talked about in the last clip. And then you're going to go ahead and start wet mopping. You always want to mop with a figure eight method so that any dirt that you do pick up in this mop system is actually going to stay on one side of your mop. Now, if you flip that around and you start doing figure eights the other direction, any dirt that maybe doesn't want to stay in there is going to fall out the backside of the mop. Okay, so you run in a figure eight, so you keep all of the dirt on the front side of that mop head as you go along, and you carry it with you. Okay, so running in figure eight motions, both sweeping or both dry mopping and wet mopping, is an extremely important method. And you're going to want to make sure, as you saw, to get into your corners really, really well. Okay, it's an important step as well to get into your corners. Don't leave stuff behind as much as possible. Once you're done, based on your floor, I think every floor is a little bit different, but it's really important to go back and dry your floor. You do not have to dry it perfectly, but the more water you pick up off that floor surface, the less streaks you're going to leave behind and the nicer shine you're going to leave when you are finished with your building for the day or for that floor. So go ahead and just do a nice quick dry mop again over that floor. So it is a 3-step process. You're going to dry mop first to pick up all the big stuff. You're going to wet mop, and then you're going to go ahead back and you're going to dry mop. Then when your floor is completely dry, you're going to go ahead and put all of the items back right where you found them. I feel like it's extremely important to pay attention to where your items come from and put them back in the exact same spot. Make sure you're putting the garbage cans in the same place. People know where they are at their desks, and they know where to throw things, and they're going to miss and they're going to get frustrated. Put your rugs back down in the same spot when you're finished. The next thing to remember is that you cannot get perfectly into all the corners when you are mopping your floors with these microfiber mops, dust mops. It doesn't really matter. Your corners are going to leave stuff. Eventually, it's going to build up in those corners, and you're going to start to notice it. So one of the things that really puts us ahead of the game at Weber Cleaning is our attention to detail, our professionalism. So we aren't going to leave that stuff in the corner. We aren't going to go, oh, well, my mop doesn't get there, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that. Once in a while, when you start to see that little bit of buildup, even a tiny bit, or every shift, depending on your location, you're going to want to grab a wet microfiber rag, and you're going to want to use the same cleaner as you're cleaning your floor with, or no cleaner at all, whatever needs to be done. But you're going to want to go ahead and get in those corners. You're going to want to grab those dust boards because your wet mop is going to rub along it, and sometimes you're going to leave a dirt line on those mop boards. And then like your thresholds. So there's the line that runs across the doorways between carpet and hard floor is called a threshold. And those thresholds, you'll get buildup in there as well. And so you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to want to mop with your rag in those thresholds and get all that little bit of grime that gets left behind. That's what's going to set us apart, and your client and your customer is going to notice.